raving, rolling monster.
It's just awesome.
It looks like hell, if you can imagine.
I've seen it firsthand. It's very tremendous.
But it's greater than man, that's for sure.
It sounds literally like a freight train going by you at a railroad crossing. And the roar is just deafening.
When you hear that, you hope it isn't heading toward
It
you.
is a powerful piece of thing.
It is one of the most powerful forces on the planet. At its peak, a forest fire can consume 200 acres a minute and create hurricane-force winds. It is a force that seems nearly impossible to control. Fire and the people who fight it have been a part of the story of the Tillamook Forest for decades. August 14th, 1933. The forest was tinder dry and ready to burn. Logging in this weather was risky. Shortly after noon, at a timber operation near Gales Creek, loggers dragged a large Douglas fir into a loading area.
And as they brought in this big log, it started a fire going, a smoldering, and got into the logging slash and just exploded. By the time they could get, enough people into it, it had got a good start.
They called out the fire crews from all over. Loggers, mill workers, Civilian Conservation Corps kids. The Army even showed up to give out food and supplies, and they fought it hard and started to get it under control.
By the 10th day, the weather began to cool. A sprinkle of rain began to fall, and firefighters grew hopeful. But the next day, temperatures soared, and an east wind kicked in, fanning the flames and spreading the blaze to new areas of the forest.
It exploded, many mile-wide fire front, trees crowning, just total devastation, and it was like, get out of the way because there's no way we're going to stop this fire.
At that point, it was just plain unstoppable.
The main thing was get out and save their hides.
The blazing fires combined into a giant firestorm. The ground cracked, and fire exploded upward, sucking in air that uprooted trees, twisting them out of the ground. For miles around, a giant mushroom cloud was visible over the Tillamook Forest. This haunting scene of massive forest fire would repeat itself every 6 years in what locals came to know as the 6-year jinx, and each time the Tillamook fires burned into their lives.
It was coming down the hill at us, and it was picking up logs, and it was blowing down snags, and it just looked like a huge tornado moving at us. I told the guys, throw your saw in the back of the pickup and let's get the heck out of here. I always give credit to the guy that was driving the engine because he backed that thing down the hill as fast as he could go for 2 miles and backwards.
I remember the big trees being ripped out by their roots, and hearing them, it's just a sound and a feeling and a look that unless you experience it, I don't think you really can tell somebody what it's about.
I was down on the side next to the Gales Creek Forest Camp, and all of a sudden the old Anlicker snash took off, and there was pieces of bark 50 feet long, went up in the air, and I never saw them again. And I never want to see a firestorm like that again in my life. That's scary.
Any of these big fires have a roar like an earthquake, and you can hear the roar when a crown fire is going up a slope. You can hear it for miles, and if that don't put a chill when you hear that, because you hope it isn't heading toward you.
Ash from the fire fell on the decks of ships 500 miles out to sea and darkened the skies as far away as Portland and Tillamook, turning day to night.
People were driving with their cars with their lights on. Farmers were noticing that their chickens went to roost because they thought it was dark already. That's how huge that column of smoke was that came over the city of Tillamook.
The 1933 fire finally stopped, and fog and rain came in September. It was the change in weather, not the fire breaks dug by thousands of firefighters, that finally silenced the raging blaze. The fires of 1933, 39, and 45 left a 400 square mile wasteland. Over 350,000 acres had burned and reburned in the 3 devastating fires.
Nothing but blackened stumps as far as the eye can see.
It was a horrendous sight. It was literally a sea of dead trees.
Most places there wasn't even a green sprig of any kind. It was just black, burned, and gray ashes. Once in a while you saw wildlife that didn't get out.
It's a very quiet, desolate, eerie looking scene.
I really thought at the time that probably they'd never grow trees because it burned so hot. Just what will we ever do with it now? What can we do with it, you know?
As early as 1934, timber salvage operations began. The scorched trees produced good, usable lumber, but cutting the blackened timber was hard work. Locals dubbed these loggers the Tillamook coal miners.
You guys come home looking a little bit dirty, and all you'd see was his eyeballs and his teeth. He'd be smoky. I don't think he ever really got clean until he took a good bath, which was Saturday night.
We were working so close together, we would fall a snag and the next person would be over here falling a snag 20 foot from you. You just wanted to make damn sure you wasn't falling it towards somebody else, another set of fallers when you was falling.
We always tried to run competition with the other crews. See who get the most trees, and we always say, oh, we beat you today.
I worked for 5 years as a foreman on the crew then, and it seemed like I'd get the crews out and then I'd grab a saw and go to cutting myself. I couldn't stay away from it.
In the end, crews salvaged over 1.5 million snags and built 380 miles of fire corridors and access roads. The test of the new fire system came in 1951, exactly 6 years after the previous fire.
When the 51 fire did start up, it was like, oh no, here we go again. We're going to burn another 200,000 acres.
Well, that was my feeling. My God, are we going to do it again? And I hope these fire breaks hold.
The fire of 1951 started like the others, and to many it seemed it would be another uncontrollable blaze.
This one was different because the people were ready to fight the forest fire. They trained the crews, they got the equipment, they were able to mobilize a lot quicker, and they had better firefighting techniques. They were able to get the hoses and the pumps in the creek and suppress the fire.
The 1951 blaze burned only 32,000 acres before firefighters squelched it.
We stopped her. We stopped her. We battled her to a standstill and didn't have to wait for the rain.
It broke the 6-year jinx, and there was a lot of people that were pretty happy about that. How do you replant 365,000 acres and there's literally miles and miles of nothing but devastation? It was a daunting task, and I'm sure there was a lot of people back then that said, you can't do it.
With snags cleared and fire protection in place, major replanting efforts began. Forestry workers and inmates from the nearby South Fork camp began planting 2-year-old Douglas fir seedlings. And in an experimental first, pilots dropped seed from helicopters.
I remember the helicopters coming in here and watching them and thinking, they're dropping seeds. Trees are gonna grow again.
One of the most popular programs brought children from schools, churches, and youth groups out to the forest to help replant the burn.
Look at 'em come. Here's a mob scene everyone likes to see. Young Americans on the march with something fine and constructive to do.
Well, I'm right here. Right there. The bad part about it was, when it was raining, you always had a wet bottom. It kept running down your pants, the water did. Doesn't matter what kind of clothes you had. And it was like We were glad when the day was over with. It's hard work.
We were issued these funny looking things that you planted the tree with. I thought it was kind of a neat thing to have done. A dozen trees maybe I helped plant that are growing.
Though the climate and soil were ideal, the new trees faced a hostile environment.
The trees were like ice cream cones to deer and elk.
The deer would follow the planters around, pull the trees out of the ground, and eat them.
Particularly the elk. He'd go through and he'd pick up 5 or 6 trees, pull them right out of the ground, then he'd stop and chew the tops out, and you'd find 5 or 6 roots laying there in a pile.
For every 3 trees that were planted, 2 were eaten by the deer and elk. And so you would think that this thing's not going to be successful.
The planting program continued for over 2 decades, planting more than 72 million Douglas fir seedlings and spreading more than 1 billion seeds across 325 square miles of forest.
My children asked me if they would ever see the Tillamook Burn be a forest. And I said, well, yeah, I think you will. But I didn't know whether I would be here to see another forest. But I have.
It really gives you a sense of accomplishment when you see stuff that you planted, that you actually had a hand in it, because it's going to be here for a long, long time now.
Lots of beautiful trees, tall, kind of gracious, I guess. It's so hard for me to believe that these were just seedlings. I look at them and they weren't here in 45. They're here now.
It's pretty unbelievable that you could have changed that whole panorama in a few years. So many times people that work a career, they never get to see a culmination of their effort. I saw it when it was smoking, and they see it when it looks like it does here today.
Where's the Tillamook Burn? It's gone. It's gone. It's no longer. It's all refurbished. We don't even talk about those anymore. We talk about all the beautiful green trees we have back now and the way it should be, and the way we wish it'll be always.